Everyone, Divi here with a series review, the first one being done with this kind of format, and what other show can I do it with than the one that's returning, Gotham, with its mid-season premiere entitled Rogues Gallery, which I honestly do not get because almost no Batman villains are in this episode, with the exception of a couple that were forced into there because it's not a Gotham episode if you don't put something in there that it did not need to be. But before I get into that, the overall synopsis for this episode is that the last time we saw Gordon, he was demoted to a security guard at Arkham Asylum because he didn't want to quit, but at the same time he didn't want it to give into the antics of the mayor. So the mayor demoted him, and now he is stuck in Arkham Asylum as a security guard. And obviously things are going to happen that will prove that Gordon simply just doesn't belong here, but then we have the conflict that he simply just cannot come back to the police force. So therefore, we have our new case within Arkham Asylum, and that is that somebody is taking patients and not necessarily killing them, but practically turning them into vegetables via electrical therapy. And so it's up to Gordon, with a little help from his friends like the Beatles, to be able to solve this mystery. And overall, I really enjoyed the vibe of this episode. I really did. I really liked the story of having all these inmates providing the danger rather than the comic booky, cartoonish villains that we have out there. We have these inmates that actually did make me feel a sense of terror in a way, even though some of them were used for comedic purposes, especially during that montage, but they were still very interesting. I actually found the inmates in this episode, within the setting of Arkham Asylum, to be rather interesting. It's a shame that we didn't really see more of them. I kind of wish that we could have gotten to know a few of these, especially the one that was reciting, that I think is laying here in the bed here, the one that was reciting Shakespeare. I liked him. I don't know, there was some kind of likability to him, and I wish that they would have brought him back. Who they did brought back in a big way was one of the patients that I looked at and said, you know what, I think that guy would be a good villain. And that's this guy, Jack Gruber, who was giving Gordon the impression that he was simply just another patient, but in the end, it is revealed that he was actually the main villain, using all these different victims, one of them being the red herring, which was this lady who was nice, but obviously seemed like she was up to something. He was using all these people as his own experiments, and also his way to get out of Arkham. And I liked that not only did they bring him back for the big reveal that he was the villain, but it's almost like they knew that this guy was a rather cool character. You know, he came off as a bit of a Hannibal Lecter type villain. So just like Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, spoilers for that movie, I'm sorry, he gets away. They actually make him get away and escape into the city, so therefore it is certainly not the last time that we're going to see of Jack Gruber, and I'm actually pretty glad because I really found him to be quite an interesting villain. The stuff with Gordon actually investigating the case was rather enjoyable, especially when they introduced Dr. Tompkins here. I can't do the purring sound, I don't know why, I can't do it like Conan O'Brien, but I'm liking her quite an awful lot. Okay. Her in, Barbara out. Alright, perfect. Bruno Heller, make that happen. Oh, and while I mention her, I guess I should say that they brought back Barbara for this episode and her conflict. I don't have a picture of her, but they brought her back in this episode and I'm like, oh my god, no. However, it led to an interesting a couple of interesting payoffs. One is that I think her name was Martinez, I might be wrong, I can't remember, but the Hispanic woman, the police officer who she was with, who she was cheating with on Gordon and ran to after her conflict again, she actually had the voice of reason to say, you know what, I think this was wrong, you should really go back to Gordon, but of course Barbara's not having it. I'm sorry, I interrupted your life. Oh my goodness, I never really disliked the character this much since for a long time. Another character in this episode came pretty close, and that was this guy. He was the warden of Arkham Asylum, and man, as soon as he popped into the screen, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like this character. I really hope he dies. Oh, he did die. Good. Unfortunately, we still have to deal with Barbara because she's still around and she still takes the cake. But this guy, man, at least he got somewhat of a comeuppance. But Gordon is on his first week there, and this guy's already dogging on him, saying, you're very insufficient at your job. Did you not see him rush into action when that guy was getting beat up at the beginning during the play? However, the second payoff that Barbara got was getting somewhat of a prank call when she calls Gordon's apartment and there's a girl at the other end of the phone, and therefore she is led to believe that Gordon found himself another girlfriend. And, I was just like, yes, take it, just take it. That's what you get. Too bad that it came at an expense of forcing these two into this episode. Because, like I stated earlier, it's not a Gotham episode unless you force a Batman reference of some kind into this episode. Now, they could have done it worse. They could have actually had Bruce Wayne and Alfred come back and put him in there even though they didn't need to be there. As cool as they are, especially Alfred. There's moments where even I have to admit, why are they in here? They're not providing anything to the main plot of the show, and they're just putting him in there because, oh, he's Bruce Wayne, he's gonna be Batman someday. They didn't do that in this episode, thank God, but they still found a way to put Selina Kyle and Poison Ivy to break into Gordon's apartment for shelter one night, mainly because she was sick, and that's it. That's literally it. And like I said, this leads to the little funny come-upping moment of having her be that other woman on the phone, and Gordon and Barbara thinks that Gordon already is with another girl, and that was sweet, yes, but still you should have found another way than to force these characters into this episode when they clearly did not need to be there. I mean, it led to nothing. However, the main plot of the story led to, in my opinion, one of the best moments of the episode was the return of Harvey Bullock, and you can tell from Gordon's face that he enjoyed seeing him in that scene just as much as I did, because as soon as he comes in, it's almost like they recognized what the audience was going to feel like. Hey, it's like the old days again. So it was really cool to see the two of them together, and I actually kind of, without directly saying it, admit that they kind of miss each other, even if they didn't see eye to eye. They're kind of like, yeah, you know what, we formed something. We formed something in the past couple of 10 episodes, and it's a shame that we don't have it anymore, so we're hoping to bring it back someday. But for now, we're just going to have to deal with certain appearances of Bullock popping in here and there. At least I'm assuming it'll be cool to see him in the next episode, and hopefully he has a reoccurring role for the rest of the season, considering the change in setting for Gordon. But this is hopefully one of many reunions that we're going to see in the latter half of the season, and it's very enjoyable to see these two together, especially during this scene where Bullock is working his magic around and he's being Bullock. And like I said, there was that moment where you got that patient who's reciting Shakespeare, and he's like, I can dig that. It's moments like that I hope Gotham keeps intact to making the show much more enjoyable. And we also got a couple of other interesting things in the background. Again, they're still moving the subplots of Penguin and Maroni and Fish Mooney and Butch and all that stuff at a slow pace, because they're trying to build up to that climax that's eventually going to happen at the end of season 1 as the finale. But still, they're doing interesting things. They're doing a couple of things that I do enjoy, that I do respect. I liked the angle they did with Penguin here, where he tries to act like a hotshot, but he's taught a lesson in hubris by Maroni that not only it had some moments that were generally funny, generally good and well made, but also it made Maroni an even more interesting character, because even he has hubris. Despite being a mob boss, even he recognizes when certain things demand respect. During that one line where he says, those fishermen who are risking their lives, and they risk their lives if you watch Deadliest Catch. So I like that, even if it was just one line of dialogue, I looked at Maroni and said, I know that you're a bad guy, but I can't help but respect you and understand why you needed to teach Penguin a lesson. And even though it didn't develop his plot entirely in terms of what he's scheming, it was still a nice little addition in this episode. And what I also liked was the story with Mooney, who's obviously trying to take over, but she didn't think about the fact that there was going to be somebody else in line should Falcone bite the dust. And this is where Butch comes in, because apparently the next person in line is actually very close friends with Butch, and therefore she uses Butch to try to convince him otherwise, which led to not only development in the character of Butch. I mean, he wasn't just a two-dimensional villain anymore. I was like, okay, that was actually kind of cool. You know, you're still a henchman, but you're a three-dimensional henchman, and I like you. And the actor, you know, he's a really likable actor in that role. The only thing I didn't like is how Scorsese it got at the end. As soon as they're, parking cars, I'm like, I know this is gonna lead to that guy's death. And as soon as that music, that old 1950s music is playing inside the car, I thought that was a bit too much. It felt like the director was trying really hard to recreate Goodfellas, or at least a scene from a Scorsese movie, just a bit too much. But still, I like what they did with the character of Butch, and they fleshed him out in a way that I wasn't expecting them to do so. This was definitely one of the most enjoyable episodes of season 1 of Gotham so far, and definitely welcome return, a mid-season return for the show. It still had its flaws. It still had that trademark forcing in of certain material that didn't need to be there. But I still had a good time with this episode. So I give Rogues Gallery a high 7 out of 10. Definitely a good way to start off the latter half, the back end of Season 1 for Gotham. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode. And I believe we do have another episode next week. But afterwards, I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check Wikipedia. I'll see you guys then.